Chapter 8. I remember lying on the pallet that I slept on and listening to all the things that went on before I went to sleep. The whippoorwills was a hollering for all they were worth. The night owls was a screaming, and Grandpa was a coughing in his bed, and Pa was a snoring. I never will forget the crickets. They chirped all night, and the katydids. They made it sound like chant, 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 chant. Lightning bugs was a flying in and out of everywhere. Nick chased something around the kitchen and out across the field. He didn't bark much. He sort of ran by sight, and he was sure giving chase to something. Things were pretty calm when I woke up the next morning. I got up and went out in the yard. Pa was still sleeping under the tree. The flies had settled on him, but he was a snoring and didn't seem to care. The dog had laid down by him, and when I got up, he came over to me and was wagging his tail. I liked him. He was a nice dog. I could hear Grandpa stirring around in his room. He never interfered with Pa, no matter what he did. He comes outside and spoke to me. How about going down to the spring and filling this bucket for me? I need some water. I took it and went and filled it for him and brought it back. He took it and went in his room. All the rest of the family was up by then and was a-doing one thing or another. Wright and Albert was feeding the stock. May and Nanny was a-milking the cow and giving her some feed. Sue was looking for eggs, and Annie was the baby. Katie and Jessie was asleep. Ma was getting breakfast and a-knocking on the stovepipe. Pa finally wakes up and commenced to slapping his mouth. I guess that it was dry, 'cause he sure was having a time with it. He went over to the water bucket and drank half of it. Ma said to me to get another, and I did. Is that coffee done, Rose? He loaded. It's on the stove, Ma says. Pa gets him a cup and starts in on it. He would blow a while and drink a while. Man, this stuff is so good, he said to himself, and he finished the cup. This morning was the morning that I was supposed to start school. All of us young'uns that were old enough, that is, when Ma got breakfast done, she put some lasses and biscuits in a lard bucket for us to take to school. We all gathered around the table and went through the meal without anyone saying too much to each other. We had butter and blackberries that had been canned a long time ago. Everyone who wanted coffee could drink it, and whoever wanted milk or water got it, or Ma poured the milk, that is. After breakfast, we all gathered up and began to take stock of one another. They had on their new shoes and one thing and the other. I just had on a pair of mammy overalls. I couldn't wear them shoes that Pa had bought me, so I went barefoot. It was about 2 miles cross country, so off we went. It was about most of an hour to reach the destination. We pulled up in the yard after a while, and the older ones commenced to talk to the people already there. There was the Blaylocks, the Oakleys, the Wrens, the Hesters, the Bratchers, and on and on. They came up to our crowd and commenced to greet all of us except me, and the biggins told them my name. What a crowd. Some of them were over 6 feet tall with a full beard, and some of them were like me, about 6 or 7. Pretty soon the teacher come to the door. She rung the bell, and all of us gathered up in a line. Rosa May took me by the hand, and I stood by her. When we got inside, she took us to the seats and let me sit there with May. My name is Julia Hester, and I will be your teacher for this year, and as far as I know. I teach 8 grades here, and some will be put in grades that I think you are best suited for. She began to call out the neats and sent them around in different seats and give them books accordingly. Then she got to May, and she gave me a primer. It had the story of the little red hen and the ABCs and half chick and on and on. I didn't know the first thing about that, what was to come later. The first day I was just supposed to observe the situation as a whole. About the time that I was just about ready to pee all over myself, the teacher called a recess of 15 minutes. Well, sir, the boys went one way and the girls went the other, and we all hit the brush. Wright told me where to go. When we got back to the school grounds, some of the older ones wrestled and some of the girls flirted with the boys. We weren't out long before we had to go back in. It was a one-room shack with no insulation or anything. It looked pretty bad to me. I learned later that day the woman teaching us was a volunteer with no pay at that time. I wasn't too interested in what was going on. I got through the day and had me one of them lasses biscuits for lunch. There was a spring that we got water from. After we finished the school day, we headed for home. We had a lot more fun leaving than going. We go by this place that had a lot of flint rocks laying all around. Albert said Indians used to make their arrowheads there. We looked and found a lot of them. Some of them broke and some of them not. Albert said it was the Oconee or something like that. We came across this old hoss that looked like he was starving to death, and he was a standing down in the mud and couldn't get out on the solid ground. All of us kids tugged and pulled until we got him out. Albert and Wright pulled some grass and brought it to his head. The next morning when we came by, he was dead, and the buzzards were sailing around overhead. I guess that he was just too far gone to make it any further. I heard later that the hoss had been sick, and some feller up on Hyco that owed him had let him out to die, and that he did. I learned some of my ABCs that day, and the teacher told me about the little red hen. I had some doubts about a hen planting wheat. Since I didn't know anything, I didn't say anything. It was a pretty good story. Mostly Rosa May taught me what I learned. We had to listen to what the biggins was being told to do. Some of us was better than the red hen. Some of it was better than the red hen. I never learned to be a kid very well. Seems I was always trying to get into things that weren't being taught to me. I sort of liked to make the letters that May showed me. Yes, sir, I like a pencil. Things sort of went along all right for a while, nothing much in the way of excitement. One day Sam Rice, the feller with the cat poop flower, came in the yard and his wagon with his son Ralph Henry. He calls to Pa and waves him over to the wagon. Tom, he lows, I got a bill for last year's things I bought over at the store, and I want you to tell me how much it says. It's a small piece of paper, and it can't come to much. Well, Pa couldn't read either, but he didn't want Sam to know that, so he calls Albert over. My eyes have been acting up, Sam, so I'll get this boy to see what it says. Well, Albert says, it's got listed all the stuff that you got last year, and in the bottom figure that you owe is $125.67. Well, I'll be, Sam says, because I don't know how much $125 is, but if they say that that's how much I owe, I guess that's how much I owe. Sam, Pa allows, where did you get the buckets you got in that wagon? Well, the feller at the store told me I could take my pick of what he had, and that's what I come up with. Ain't they pretty? I got big ones and colored ones and plain ones and some with lids and some of them open. I really like them, and I can't wait till I can show Betty. But what are they for? Pa asked. Why, I don't know. That hadn't crossed my mind, what to do with them. Do you have to do something with them? Why, I could put one thing and another in them. I'll find lots of uses for these buckets. Why, I came by for is to tell you that I'm being baptized next Sunday, and I want you to come to it, you and your family. Well, I'll be, Pa says. You getting put under the water? What brought this on, Sam? Well, my sister Anna, the one that married Gilliam, has been after me to join the church. Why, I don't know the first thing about what they do in them churches. I hain't never been in one. She was a-telling Gilliam that he was going to burn in hell fire if he didn't get under the water. He didn't pay her no mind, and she started in on me. I sure don't want to burn forever. Why, you can't make a stick of wood last hardly at all, and she's talking about burning forever. I told her that if that was all that it took to keep from going to hell, I would be there first thing Sunday morning. But Betty said that she won't be a-going. She didn't give a dang about what come, hell or high water. So I guess I will be on my own. You all be sure and come and see me go under the water, he lowed. The old mule weren't in any kind of hurry, 'cause he knew there weren't much where he was a-going. So he just sort of mambled on, but Sam didn't care. He was engrossed in his buckets. The church that Sam was going to be baptized was down near the Busky Fort, a Methodist church. My ma and now Grandma had belonged to this church. I had been by there with my pa and family when we had visited Uncle Gilliam and his folks. Pa and him used to get loaded together, and Uncle Gilliam used to play the concertina or something. When they got to hitting that corn, Pa would put his hands in time and play a mouth harp once in a while. It seemed that they had a grand old time, all but the women folks, and they were never too happy with the arrangement. That didn't seem to bother Pa and Uncle Gilliam. They just kept hitting the jug and carrying on till all the booze was gone. Uncle Gilliam used to say, just look at old Tom, hain't got a bone in his hands, 'cause that brought Pa out with all he could give. I could see Sam being baptized down there. There was one thing that Sam never did much, and that was to have any dealings with water, only to drink. He never washed much. So So when they put him in all that water, I just knew that they were in for some trouble. One night I heard Pa talking to Ma. Rose, he says, we just ain't going to make it on this place. I don't care what Calvin Warren says. It just ain't here. I'm going into Roxborough one of these days soon and see them people at the cotton mill. They tell me that people work there and make pretty good money. Why, I could take my crowd and put all of them to work, plus myself, we might get along pretty good. I don't know, Tom. We ain't never been into no town except the time we went in to see that train, and that didn't come off so good. Yeah, I know, Pa says, but things might be better, too. We'll just have to wait and see. They went off to sleep, and so did I. The next day, Sue says to me, I want for us to go over and see Granny Kinley graveyard. That is over there in the woods. I was all for it. It was one of the weekends days and no school. We didn't have any crops, so no work to speak of. On about the shank of the morning, we told Ma that what we wanted to do. And that was chapter 8. I hope you're enjoying this. Sorry, I seem to still kind of stumble on my words a little bit, but I hope I'll get better. I am going to try to maybe get this as a audio book. I'm still working on that. I don't know if I'm going to read it or try to get somebody else. I don't mind reading it. I just got to get, it just seems like I keep stumbling on some of my words. But anyway, I think it would be interesting to have it out there. Anyway, I hope you guys have a great evening, and God bless, and I will talk to you guys later. Bye.